Do you wake up at night and you have just dreamt that you bought a beautiful historic home, or you have always wanted a southern, well-appointed manor? Well, today this video is for you. I am interviewing a wonderful guest who's going to tell you not to do it. Just kidding. And hold on to the end because we have a big reveal for the GCH luxury team, and we are starting right now. Hey, welcome back to our channel. So as promised, we're gonna finally start talking, what does it mean to buy a custom home or sell a custom home or renovate or restore one? And because I grew up in a family doing this with excellence in the DC area, but just like you, I'm new to Augusta, I'm gonna be learning right along with you. I have the privilege today of welcoming my guest, Laurie Preis, who is originally a Philadelphia native but has lived in the Augusta area for over 30 years. And today she's going to show us a little bit of her beautiful home and tell us a little bit of what it's like to renovate a home in the historic side of Augusta. Laurie, I'm so excited that you're here with us today. Tell me where we're sitting.
Thank you so much for having me, and welcome to our Grand Georgian home. We are in the heart of the house right now, in our wonderful living room that has this beautiful millwork that's all original to the house.
It is beautiful. Have you renovated older homes before, or is this your first?
This is our first older home. I've built homes and I've renovated newer homes, but this is our first home of this age and with this much space and projects involved.
Projects, like you're saying that with a little bit of hesitancy. So I mentioned before that you might steer our audience away from something like this, or maybe you'll encourage them. What specifically drew you to this house? Was there anything that you were looking for?
I think that architecturally and visually, this home stood out to us. It was very much like homes that we'd been looking at in Atlanta, and it's just very classic. We love Georgian Revival. We love the style, the symmetry, the beauty of the lines and the structure. And so I think it was really that kind of was what drew us in.
When you started your process, did it change a little bit? I mean, what were you initially looking for? You mentioned that you liked houses that you saw in the Atlanta area, but was there anything specific you were looking for? Square footage, room size, the grandness of the front of the house, any of those things?
I think all of those things.
All of those things.
We definitely wanted to redefine a little bit of the interior space, and we did. We've opened up the kitchen and the kitchen sort of keeping room, which is the room that sits between the kitchen and the living room. And that's now a great space that we love, and it's just brought it up to contemporary standards. There were things that we wanted to do outside, some of which we've put a little bit of a pause on, just because in historic communities it's more complex. It's not your average go get a builder, get the plans together and put things in. You have a lot more process involved.
But specifically on the outside of the house?
Specifically on the outside, yes.
So I'm going to go off script for a second. A lot of the new homes that are being built really don't have designated space, right? They're into open concept. I mean, you did open up the kitchen, and that's something that creates a little more space, but is there anything about having an older home that may have attracted you in light of the fact that you're kind of going against the trend of the big open concept? Because we definitely have the kitchen, you have a family seating area, we're in the living room space, so there's defined rooms everywhere.
Correct. Yeah, I think we were trying to balance. So we were balancing what is in the structured rooms and creating, where we could, more openness. So we do, where we have defined rooms, we still have big open doorways. This room is bounded by 3 large open doorways, one of which we're still working on. But, you know, we still have that open sense, but still a little bit of boundary.
That's so interesting. So I'll share with the audience that I lived in a very open concept house, and when we moved here, I specifically looked for a house that had more defined spaces, because I don't know about you, but I felt like with one gigantic room, you might use it all the time, but then you don't have the quiet spaces. You can't ever get away from the TV, or maybe if you have an affinity for the fridge, you can't ever really get away from your kitchen. So I love walking into your home and seeing that there are defined sitting areas and areas for something other than watching TV or eating or whatever else you might be into. You have these spaces that are each little sanctuaries in and of themselves.
Yeah, we were looking for gathering space, and I think gathering space is always great, again, which is why we opened the kitchen up the way we did, because no matter what you do, no matter how big a home we've ever had, everyone ends up in the kitchen.
Right.
And it's a great space, so why not make it also an entertaining space? But I agree, for living in a home, if you want a quiet room or a room that has another purpose, you need a little bit of boundary there. And it makes, like fences sometimes make good neighbors, walls also make good house guests.
Amen to that. So we're going to take a design pause for a moment. We're going to talk about some of the architectural styles that you might find here in Augusta. Now, the house that we're sitting in is considered a Georgian revival, but that is actually a play on a Georgian colonial. And those of you who live in the East, you know colonials really well. You may not know that there are things that you're looking at that absolutely make it a colonial. So they typically have a square or boxed front. They are marked by symmetry. They have larger windows with usually 10 and sometimes 20 panes of glass. I don't know if you've ever counted, but you have these very well-defined paned glass windows. And then you have typically an all brick facade. Now you can get into the builders who build like mock colonials, where you'll see just the very front of the house is brick and then the rest of it is siding or a vinyl siding, and they're still beautiful, but they're not truly a traditional colonial home. What makes a colonial a Georgian revival is that Georgia developed its own colonial style, and then some of the things that you would see on the front and on the sides of a traditional colonial were then exaggerated. So you might have really beautiful columns with exaggerated molding, with exaggerated doors. They typically have beautiful large windows. Everything, again, has to be symmetrical. You'll see a porch on one side, but typically there'll be another porch on the other side. And they create a presence that is awe-inspiring, really. The majority of the footage that you're seeing is of Laurie's home and some of the other homes that are in this area that we are currently sitting in, which is the Somerville historic area of Augusta. Laurie, what do you find are the most interesting features of your home?
Interesting has different connotations, but I think for our purposes, my favorite things are the three little arched windows that we have, in the two in the front and one on the side of the home, and they're very unique to some of the homes around here. A few of the homes, if you go through Somerville, you'll see arched doorways on a front door. I wish we had one of those, but they're more on the cottages. They're just adorable. And our arch windows are really kind of my favorite feature on the whole house. I'd like to do more with them, and I'm hoping that this year I'm able to find some time to do that.
And you painted your entire house white. Were there any issues doing that? So it went from a red brick house to a beautiful white brick house. Was there any kind of rub in the neighborhood?
I think that someone else on the same street, further up the street, had kind of paved the way several years earlier. So there was another home similar to ours, a little bit smaller, that had their home painted. And also there are a lot of, especially if you go one street over, one street that way, you'll see a lot more white brick or off-white. Ours is actually, it's a version of white. It's a unique Benjamin Moore color. But yes, I think there was enough that had been done in recent years that was not something we had an issue with, thankfully.
Not a big deal. So that kind of gets us into what you can and cannot do with your home in this neighborhood. So because you're located in historic Somerville, are there any rules or guidelines in regards to what you renovate and or restore?
Yes, there are always rules and there are guidelines. They do call them guidelines, but they're really rules. So we use something called a certificate of appropriateness. Anytime we want to do something in particular to the outside of our home, not so much on the inside, but anything that changes something about the way the property looks from the street view, whether it's a fence, whether it's, building a wall, anything, we submit a certificate of appropriateness to the Historic Commission, and then the staff, it can also be staff approved or it has to go to the commission. If it goes to the commission, you've got a little bit of a wait, and it's a good idea to put all your documents and photographs and other things together to be able to make a presentation so the commission understands what you're asking.
Well, that gets into knowing a little bit about the history of your house. Do you know much about the history of this house?
We have been working through it. The home was built in 1924. We've been able to find the name of the original owner. We found the name of the construction team that built it. We're trying to find the architect, and we're trying to get more details, but right now we do have a historian locally that's working on some of those things for us, hoping to get more details soon.
So now it's kind of like the big, should we do this, should we not do this? What was your biggest headache in this house?
Well, our biggest headache was something I expected not to be an issue at all. We moved in and we had at the very back of our property a section of fence that was old, rotted wood, falling down, truly falling down. And we knew we had to replace it. We have 2 large dogs, and there's no way that fence would have been standing. We had it removed and replaced it rather quickly, had a fencing company replace it, and we immediately were told this fencing wasn't allowed, even though it is everywhere in our community. So we were very confused by that, but did learn after a year of back and forth with the commission and attending multiple meetings that we finally got to a point where we found a happy medium, and we went ahead and removed the entire brand new fence and had a 6-foot wood fence installed in its place.
And they're happy with that.
They're happy with it.
So you do run the risk of putting in a whole lot of money and potentially having someone say, you got to pull the whole thing out. Ugh.
Always better to ask permission.
See, that's the opposite of what they tell you. They say it's always better to just do and then ask forgiveness, but not in this case.
Not in this case. Unless you like paying for things twice, I don't advise it.
Ugh, that is a huge headache. I don't wish that on anyone. Okay, so what was your biggest triumph with this house?
Well, getting the fence done was our biggest triumph. We were very excited to finally put that to bed. I would say one of our favorite things that we did, our favorite projects outside, was really we put in a half-circle driveway. Prior to that, there were no other driveways other than in the rear, and it was for the owners. So no one could get to you. Delivery people, friends, visitors. So we were very excited when we finally got the driveway done. That was a big project.
And it is beautiful. It's a beautiful driveway.
Thank you.
Also, I mean, you may not have put this in your triumph list, but you had a wedding here.
We did have a wedding in the middle of renovation, so that maybe if we're the reluctant renovators, we're the reluctant wedding planners as well. So we had a wonderful backyard wedding. It was a lot of fun, and it was a beautiful day.
So one of the questions that I love to ask, and everybody knows that I've been making these crazy videos about master's rentals. Not only did you host a wedding here, but your house was a master's rental. Can you speak a little bit to that?
This was the first time, so as old as this home is, it has never been used for master's guest. And because of the way that we had done the renovation, we felt that it was a perfect home for a master's event or company to use, and it turned out to be wonderful. So this is the first year, and it was a fantastic group that we had here, and they loved especially the outdoor entertaining space and used it very well.
And just for our audience sake, you utilize this house as a host house versus a sleeper house.
Correct.
Yeah, so that actually brings in a little more money, but there's a little more risk involved as well.
I have always been a host house, but I'm very strategic in who we host. So If you're going to be a host home, you need to know who is renting, and you need to know as much from your representative as possible about that group and about the insurances on the property. And I will say that we have had wonderful experiences every single year that we've been a host home. And this is first year for this home, but I've been a host home well over 10 years.
We're getting to the end of this interview, but I haven't shared some big news that I teased at the beginning. So the big news is that Laurie is not just my guest. Laurie is actually joining the GCH luxury group. So not only does she live in one of these beautiful homes, but she's able to use her expertise and her 30 years experience being in this area to connect you with the home of your dreams, especially in the Augusta proper area. But she is also able to help you regionally, just like I help you. She's licensed both in Georgia and South Carolina, can help you in Columbia County and in Richmond County. So welcome. Are you excited?
Thank you. Very excited to be here, excited to be part of the GCH team and the incredible things that are happening at GCH, and excited to bring to the customers and the clients the things that they might need. Using my professional background, my personal connections, and local expertise, I can bring that all together and help serve anybody wherever they're looking in the greater CSRA.
I love it. And you know what that means for us is that we now have a wealth of knowledge that my 2 years being in the area just couldn't give you. There's just so much about Augusta to still learn, and I'm learning right along with you. We love doing what we do, and I'm going to let Laurie sign us off.
So if this video piqued your interest about historic homes, whether you're interested in new or old homes, go ahead and download our relocation guide, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the next video.